All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Let's wait for a little while to get started. Let's give another 1 more minute for this to get started. Meanwhile, Vengadesh, can you share your presentation?
Yeah, just a minute. Huh? Divanshu, can you share your screen? I
Yeah,
just sent
sure.
a message to you.
All right. So sorry for the technical glitch. I think meanwhile, we have Venkatesh sending the updated presentation. So let me introduce for the today's session. This is about content creation to delivery, and we are going to talk about today about how to consume the Adobe's content supply chain containing various applications. And Venkadesh is our speaker for the day, who is going to explain us and take us through all the examples as well as steps. How can we make most out of it? And we have Achal and myself. We will be the moderator for today. All right, so let me just share my screen. All right, so Venkatesh, do you want to take it forward? After Achal, you can just introduce yourself. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay.
Anchal, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. So, I am currently working as a technical product owner at Mondelez International. Sorry, we need to update the slide a bit. I have been working with AEM for around 15 years by now and have been exposed to various flavors of AEM, both 6.5, cloud. I've worked with AEM sites, etc. So, yeah, that's pretty much about me. Over to you, Venkatesh.
Hey, hi all. So I have more than like 18 plus years of experience in DXP, worked in different flavors of CMS platforms, DXP platforms, and even Creative Cloud platforms as well. Now, recently, I had a chance to work on an end-to-end implementation of content supply chain. So we see that other side of the story where we see AEM assets come into the picture, where once the assets comes in as an approved assets, how it is all going to different websites, mobile, and how we are creating renditions. In the age of dynamic media, we are using a profile sets create multiple optimized images for different purposes. Now, when we're talking about content supply chain, like it's another side of the story, right? So where it is particularly talking about for a smaller organizations now in the age of digital native world, we are moving towards a personalization. So earlier personalization is kind of an optional. So someone is coming with AEM sites, first we will deliver AEM pages with sites. Then the business will start using it. Then they come up with a strategy saying that okay, can we personalize? Then we will think about target versus all those things, right? Now going forward, like what the trend we are seeing is like now personalization become very mandatory, right? So it is driving commercial and revenue, and hence personalizations become more valid, more than a contextual personalizations, like how we are doing in Target, saying that okay, if the segment is of like say US or geography based or certain context based personalization, now organizations are big enterprises moving towards one-to-one personalizations. So when we're talking about one-to-one personalizations, the it is not about only the data. The data is one part of it, where how we are bringing up a different audience into it, and then how we are actually matching the content for each of these audiences. For example, in a larger enterprises, you have regional campaigns, you have global campaigns, you have a local campaigns also going on, and everything going parallelly together. Everyone need audience. It's not about only with the audience. It is also require an equal and amount of your content has to marry together, right? So that if for example, like if you are planning a global campaign and you have like audience, like say, okay, who are all traveling next 15 days to family trip versus leisure trip versus this, in that context itself for luxury travelers as one audience will come in, where the economy audience will come as one audience, and who are all like bachelors will become another audience. For everyone, the content has to be varied, right? Then only like it is actually a personalization that we are talking about, right? So when we are talking about such a kind of a huge content velocity, I'll just go through the next slides where it will talk about why we are having challenges in this content velocity, right? So we know like AEM sites, once the images comes in, it's all in our control. But when the ideation happens for a global campaign, when the actual ideation happens, that ideation itself, when you are having this many channels that you are going to target and this many images that you want to create, that itself a huge challenges. So current enterprises are facing such kind of a challenges, and how this in this presentations, how we are actually going to tackle that using an Adobe content supply chain as a solutions, and how AEM sits in the center of it, where how all these orchestration happening around. That's what I'm just going through talk about it. Do you want to next slide, please? So the agenda will be like what are all the content velocity challenges, as I mentioned, how enterprise are struggling with this challenge, right, while they scaling the content velocity, and how Adobe as a content supply chain will be a handy solution. And in the industry where we are actually looking at a holistic platform which will solve this problem, currently at the industry, this is the only tool that we are seeing as one single platform which caters for all these needs. And then the tools and ecosystem and integrations, how different tools within the content supply chain work together within the Adobe suite. And then the global enterprise use cases, what are all the different use cases that we can think about it, right? Then we go for I'll try to like bit rush because the slides are too many, but anyway, I'll try to answer few of the questions at the end as well. Yeah, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so why it's a challenge, right? So it is more of like a perfect storm where earlier we are all know saying that when we traditionally like when we build a websites, then it comes as a mobile web, then the evolution goes to tablet, then we are talking about screens. Now it's not only those channels like people are interacting with the brand. There are multiple channels coming on the way where you have a social media platform. Within the social media platform itself, you have multiple platforms where certain group of individuals have very actively, like for example, business travelers will be in the LinkedIn, or organizations will be using majority on the B2B side of it, in the LinkedIn side of it, where others are using Instagram, Facebook. So there are so many channels, including the images to the screens, OTT, mobile, and even emerging platforms like kiosk, wearables. So many channels are exploding on a day-to-day basis, and the trend will go further more only in my view, because the consumption of the digital native in the age of like your high-speed internet, it is blasting almost in every channels, right? So the new channels coming in, almost every year we are getting into a new channels, and then the one-to-one personalization, it is adding to the value, right? So now the personalization comes in, now this many number of channels, and I need this many number of content and images all in the same day, including the translations and all. If you're counting it, it is a storm we are talking about it. And how earlier, like when we are thinking about campaign of a newsletter and all, it just like okay, create just one small image and then one image for the web, tab and mobile, that's it. Now we are into a so many variation of this content has to be get created. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so I'm just talking about okay channels I'm talking about, right? So I'm just throwing few channels so that like you guys can able to relate to it, like IVR or display ads. Even for the activation of ads itself, you need different images. Push notifications, that banner itself requires a different images. YouTube have a videos, so you have different content formats, different variation of the images, and different kind of an image itself has to vary. It's not only the variation of the same image, the image itself has to vary. So if you take, these are all the challenges, like the frequent content updates will happen for this. So for example, in one channel, one image one content workflow itself, we know like how many changes it is going iteration by iteration by iteration when authors are pushing it. When such kind of an images, when we are actually doing a review, like what is the right variation for this audience, it goes into multiple iterations, right? So those are all the challenges that we are talking about. Go to the next slide, please. So these are all will add to it. Now, if you're talking about different segmentation audiences, like an industry vertical level, your job title level, these are all the audiences that we are talking about. And then the carrier stage, like these are all when you're taking into consideration more than like say 50 audiences for a global campaign that you are selecting it. And then if you're talking about like say, I want to say not even 18 channels, I'll say 10 channels consider, right? And the number of variation of those images plus the number of languages that it is going to happen and the number of formats that it has to generate. So someone with a traditional dam, right? The dam will act as a repository. Now, how these are all current in a current traditional marketing will go. Can you go to the next slide so that I can show the traditional? Yeah. So the traditional way how it will go is like someone is giving the brief to the team. The brief will come and then they will send an email and then the communication will go on when is all these campaigns has to go live and all. Then they will decide on, okay, these are all the channels I need, these are all the images. Then it will go to the creative content, creative cloud team where they will start generating the images. Once the image is done, they will put it into dam, send the link to people. Then they take the link and then they give the comments. Those are all will happen in emails, right? And ultimately from an executive level or from a leadership level, someone is coming and asking saying that, okay guys, like we have 3 campaigns running in which status we are in, can we please have a look at it? It is a chaos. Why is a chaos? Because we are using different tools for communication as a separate tool as a teams. Teams may not do an end-to-end orchestration of the approval, where teams is just for sharing the communication alone. Now for the approval process, it's all again an email will come into the other channels. Now another like if you want to create an images, it's a creative cloud. And then when you are actually finally approved, then these images will be put it into Dropbox or it is put it into another DAM and then you will download that and put it into AEM assets. So the whole handoff and the whole integration itself are clumsy and it's in the current silos. If you take an across different enterprises, currently this is the state. That's what we are seeing it, right? And even the traditional workflow for a single campaign itself will take around say 1 month. So 1 month before itself for a simple campaign, it has to come into the table, right, with all the people, with all the tools. Then they have to start, and once they start to use the process, it works very well in the current process. But when you're talking about one-to-one personalizations, it hit the boundary. Yeah, go to the next slide. So what is the challenges, right? So it's an organizational complexity. If you have medium organization or a large level enterprises or small organizations, based on your team's locations, team's presence, if it is like a simple organizations, yes, still it is manageable. But if it is a still medium, you have 3 headquarters in 3 different places, it still requires a lot of like you need to interaction challenges and governance complaints challenges and integration within these tools like the teams when you someone is uploading it or in the Slack then someone has to write a system itself to trigger those workflows manually, right? And then those are all like current challenges that we are seeing, which is these are all some of the statistics that we get it from a different forums that 73% of enterprise are struggling with the current scalability to the content velocity side of it. Can you go to the next slide? So we talked about these challenges, right? So what we need as a before we going into the solutions, what is it that can bring in value to this particular use cases where to cater the needs of bigger enterprises, right? So one way to think about it is as much as automation process has to happen, which means from a content request to how it is actually reaching to the designers to how the different campaign who are all like contributing to the campaigns who has to like who are all doing that approvals, those guys also need to come in into the place and then they have to add some value towards it. and everything has to be a single communication channel where we'll have a transparency over it. And then we also need to see saying that how AI coming into the picture, which can automate certain things. For example, I created a original images. I want to like generate multiple renditions out of it, not just a AEM renditions, but different screen based renditions by filling the others white areas. So those are all the solutions that we can able to think of to solve this particular problem. Just a minute. So how Adobe Content Supply Chain will going to solve this problem, right? So if I take Adobe Content Supply Chain, it works on the four pillars. One is planning and ideation. A specific set of tools are available, and you have a I'm really sorry, guys. So you have another pillar called creation and production. What is gone? Sorry, 1 minute. Okay, so is it audible now? Clear?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, guys. Okay, so there are four pillars like we can able to think of Adobe Content Supply Chain and Actors. So when you're talking about Adobe Content Supply Chain, it's not a one solution. It is a group of tools within the Adobe ecosystems which will sit together and solve this enterprise scaling challenges. So first pillar will cater to certain personas, right, where who are all like a campaign traffic controllers, who can or the designers will come into the pictures, and then who are all like from management and activation delivery who are AEM assets like digital librarians who will come into the pictures, and who are all analytics and how they are actually seeing that consumption is happening. Those are all will come into the picture. So different personas. So this pillar will bound to those personas. So planning and ideations will have certain tools. Creation and production, we are talking about Creative Cloud, Fireflies, AI generated content generations, like we are talking about content fragment variation generations. And then the management and delivery, which is an AEM assets. Management delivery, which comes as an AEM assets. AEM assets itself have multiple tools, which is like a content hub, and you have AEM assets for governance and meta tags and overall privacy and user access management. And then you are having a dynamic media for activations. Dynamic media will come again on top of what is generated out of the Workfront Fusion or Workfront. Those images will be taken and further profile set will be created, and that profile set will do the blasting of the distribution, right? So from an Adobe Content Supply Chain, we are seeing one unified platform, and all of these platforms talk to each other very well. And it is having an AI capability in each of these tools, both vertically and horizontally. So those the capabilities we are seeing as an added advantage, which is lagging in and silos integration of tools. So when you're talking about horizontally, you have an AI agent which is orchestrating certain things, which will have a clear context across where is that campaign is going to and how you can optimize further your productivity, right, towards that campaign enrichments. So so this is the solution that we are talking about. So I'll just go little bit detail about each pillar, what are all the tools and how it is all operating together. Can you go to the next slide, please? From a holistic perspective, from if you take say planning and collaboration, Workfront will take the actual planning. So normally planning involves certain scenarios where business will come, they will actually send a campaign request, both global as well as local. They have a predefined templates. Based on the template, they will capture the segmentation, what type of variations they need, what type of content they need. Currently, what is the collections they are having as a project collection, which is they can take in from AEM assets, and then they can submit a request. Once the request is goes to the Workfront, then the traffic controller, or like who is the campaign controller, will take that request and then they will act on top of it and saying that okay, this is the bandwidth of my current designers, and they can able to see all those things in the Workfront planning, saying that what are all the current activities done by the designers and how they are occupied. Based on that, you can allocate the SLA will be derived by the system itself, and saying that, okay, this task, this is the campaign timing that we are expecting. So it's all like well in advance, you will get the data, right? Then once it's all accepted, then the designer will get a notification in the Creative Cloud console itself from the workfront saying that, okay, this task is assigned. This is your next task that you need to work on. When they click on it, the workfront itself will give the brief, what they need to act on it. So all these like to and fro emails, it's all reduced. Now they can take that content and then they do the modification. They will design the images. Then they can actually send it for the reviewable by clicking the same button from the Creative Cloud console itself, and it can go. If it is a heavy videos or heavy big images or like a PSD kind of file, that's where your frame.io will come in. The frame.io will be an orchestration tool where it will do for the approval and annotations, right? So all of these things from the backend, from a backend perspective, Workfront Fusion is the tool which is doing all these orchestrations. Each tool individually doing its operations. Workfront Fusion is the one doing this workflow and chaining across the tools, right? Within that, you can also think about use cases related to Firefly, where you have an image, you want to pre-fill certain things. You once the master image is done, you can, as part of the same workflow, you can trigger Firefly to do that rest of the operations. You can even do the translation of certain items as part of the same workflow itself. Once it's all done and it comes to the asset management side of it, like once the campaign leaders are seeing that the images are fine, they can approve it from the workfront console itself. Once they approve it, all the approved assets will moved by Workfront Fusion to AEM assets directly. Once it comes to the AEM assets, then the dynamic media will act on top of it and it will generate the renditions. I think I created one more slide for the end-to-end workflow as such, how it will be. So the key advantage, what we are actually seeing is via Workfront, you will create a single record, which is a single system of truth, which will tell all your communications, which will also have all your modifications, which will also having all your approval process, which will also tell you like what is the final asset which is moving into the AEM assets. Then from the AEM assets onwards, it's a single source of truth of that particular image, which will manage its expiry content expiry workflows, and it will also manage your taxonomies, and it will also activate as part of the content hub for the external agencies to consuming it, as well as it will also help for sites authors and the dynamic media. Via dynamic media, it will blast for all the omnichannel requirements. So you have a single ecosystem for managing the communications, managing the workflows, managing the image changes, and you can automate certain things via AI on the entire process adoption. And then you will have a final approved image. Then again, that will go into the distribution side of it. Can you go to the next slide? So in a normal organizations, how we are actually seeing is typical enterprise tax looks like someone is using a Zira, someone using a boards for project management related. They are using a Figma as well as Canva for different designing perspective. And then they are using videos for uploading Vimo as like uploading service, as well as for Slack for communication purposes. DAM will act as a DAM repository, and then the marketing automations like the Salesforce Marketing Cloud, these are all will do the activation area of it. Analytics again will come into Google Analytics, but it won't give you like how the consumption of those content, like content analytics, how is it in the CG kind of a thing. So these are all current enterprise stacks. But just imagine if I want to do this seamless integrations, like a holistic view of how it is going and blasting all those variations. Integrating this tool itself, you need to run different teams, but it will have a lot of frictions even with that integrations. When you talk about Adobe Content Supply Chain, we all know saying that like Adobe as a suite, it works very well, right? It communicates very well within that suite itself. So Adobe Workfront have a native connector to AEM assets, and it also have native connectors to the Creative Clouds and other products of Creative Clouds like Frame.io. And Adobe AEM assets have a native integrations to the activation channels like AEM sites or even Adobe Campaign or even to your AJO, the newly coming in, right? So Adobe Analytics will also have the content analytics. You can still point it Adobe Analytics to the assets insights as well. You can see how your content as an asset is performing per se. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so this is this will give you a holistic view how these things are all like happening, right? From a creative marketing team, they will have their own requirements. From an requester, from a digital marketing agency side of it, digital marketing side of it, campaign side of it, even from the contact center side of it, social media team side of it, all of these guys will become a requesters, right? And then the creative marketing team will own the entire content creation. Normally in your organizations, if you have a chance, just go and talk to your creative marketing team. They will share their pain. We never hear to them, but once you start listening to them, you will understand the end-to-end pain of this, right? So once the request comes into the workfront planner itself having an AI generated agents now, what it will actually do is it will identify the context of who is the requester, and then it will derive the request form accordingly, right? And then that those forms will capture his contextual information, and then we can actually start triggering the further workflows. So in this diagram, if you see that vertical side, that's a workfront planner, and the different components like a Creative Cloud, Gen AI Studio, or even Firefly will all work for the image modifications or image creation process. Below, what you're seeing is the workfront fusion. Every image process, every image creations will feed the data into the workfront fusion. That workfront fusion will act as like a middleware, like an API generator, right? So that will start pushing the content to either frame.io for all the approval process, or it will further pushing it back to the workfront for further comments, right? Once based on those comments and based on further like annotations like approved kind of a thing, it will push the assets to the AEM assets. Once the assets comes into the AEM assets, then the dynamic media will take those assets in that particular folder, and it will create a profile set. Profile set, as you all aware, saying that profile set is nothing but if you have the original image, now you will have a different requirement for different images. I have these images. I want to generate it for a LinkedIn post versus social media post versus sites post versus mobile variation, including the component variations. You will generate all the presets using the dynamic media. Now dynamic media itself have two flavors to it. Now dynamic media comes up with the API, dynamic media API. Another one is a Scene 7, right? So dynamic media API, you can still integrate dynamic media plugin into even a social media platforms like HubSpot or Amplify, wherever you want, you can integrate that. You can browse the approved assets from there itself. Or you can use the Scene 7 URL. You can just create a simple interface from AEM assets, and then you can share as a collection to them so they can browse and download, and then they can upload it as well. So activation wise, everything will be handled via dynamic media. That is where it is recommended. And assets will be act as like a single source of truth and repository for governance and maintenance, where will be custodian by the digital librarians. And creative marketing cloud has their own boundaries of creating assets and pushing it to either frame.io or workfront. Workfront will have a full reporting structure and insights to understand how different campaigns are working together. How is there any risk that we are seeing in any of the campaigns, whether we can match the demand or not, right? So this is the holistic view that we can able to think of. Can you go to the next slide? So when we, after applying the content supply chain project, we see the reduction of the number of days it takes in each of the process, right? So for example, normally it took a month. Some people can able to complete it by 9 days, kind of. So that is the drastic productivity savings that we are seeing. This is, if you ask me saying that, okay, this is a revenue bounded, might not, but this will indirectly contribute to your revenue when you are planning like a scaled personalization campaigns. Yeah. So, some of the use cases that I talked about it, right? For example, you have a global campaign. Someone comes up saying that, okay, I want to run a regional campaign for say three media like a channels, and someone can come and say saying that I want to run a global campaigns, almost all the channels whatever we are having it I want to target, and my almost audiences I want to use all the audience which is built currently in our loyalty side of it, right? In such cases, those amount of generations orchestrating all these particular process, right? Each departments, each individuals, and then identifying their ad hoc tasks, and then assigning their holistic picture of like how it will be delivered. It is like quite seamless when we have some solutions like a content supply chain. But if you are having such kind of like a brand as a different teams are sitting together in a different places, just imagine you have a global campaign running where different teams, creative teams, different people are working on it. Now regional campaigns coming in, they want certain assets from the global campaigns and certain assets they want to create on their own, and certain assets they want to give it to the agency, and then the local campaigns comes in which they don't have any assets, they everything they want to get it from the global team. Now all these things going parallelly at the same time, right? Just imagine. So as a developer, we know like we have a PPI, we have a backlog, we do certain features, we deliver it. But creative marketing team or business side of it, there is they are using SharePoint for some time, they are using Teams for some time, they are using emails for some time. But ultimately, what is it they need to work on that particular day? It's all ad hoc, yeah, at this point of time. But when we are talking about like fancily one-to-one personalizations, we need to get it done. It is not like a realistic in the ground, it is completely different story altogether. Yeah, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so that's the high level that I want to like take you guys through. Like based on our experiences, we see the different usage of tools and how it can be able to orchestrate and provide a meaningful content velocity uh, for the demand it is required for the personalization. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Vengadesh, can you see the chat? I think there are some questions. Okay, I think Achal is answering those ones. But yeah, guys, feel free to just put on the questions in the chat or maybe in the Q&A, and we can pick it from there.
Venkatesh, you're talking on mute. Venkatesh, you're talking on mute.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So replacing Adobe tools with certain other tools where you still need Workfront, yes, it is still quite possible. But Workfront as a tool which will also come up with Workfront Fusion, where you have like you cannot replace a lot of tools. For example, you want to push certain assets to another DAM, consider, or a box or a drive that you want to push it. Yes, it's still possible because Workfront Fusion itself having a lot of connectors where you can use those connectors and then you can push to certain tools which you can able to cater. But anything like a custom connectors that you want to build, which still currently my understanding is we have to get in touch with professional services only. But it does have an out of box connectors, which I will share it at the end of the session, a link where you can see those connectors. You can still use external tools as well.
Yeah, so I don't think so. Other questions coming along so far? Um, Venkatesh.
Okay, hope it is useful for you guys. Um, you just like need to have a holistic understanding, saying that like content supply chain is just not a business product. It also has its equivalent capability to our side of it, like AEM, how it's all connecting together. Yeah, thank you, Tiff.
Thanks everyone for joining, and we will be shortly putting up the recordings as well on the page. So from where you found the RSVP buttons, and the slides will be available there as well.